So there's a little bit more news we wanted to talk about. One, Dave Filoni was announced as the creative head of Lucasfilm. Is that correct? Creative head of Lucasfilm?
I do believe so. Let me just go back up and double check. He has been made executive producer slash executive creative director of Lucasfilm.
Executive creative director. And so apparently too, every major outlet, I'm talking Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Collider, all those kind of spots, they had reported, we talked to our Disney reps and they said that this happened a while back, and that this is they just updated the website, but we didn't know that. Fans have been clamoring, Dave Filoni, Dave Filoni, Dave Filoni, Dave Filoni. He knows everything. It should be Dave. I love this move. I think it's smart. I think it's extremely smart for Kathy. I think she's being a head coach who's saying, I got to give up the play calling. I'm still going to be head coach, but I'm giving up the play calling. And I think that's such a smart move by her because she is a great producer. People forget that. I mean, she produced this right there, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, like every great movie from George, Steven, like all those Rat Pack guys, the movie rats, like she is a big in responsibility for a lot of those great movies. She has flubbed, but this is a smart move. Get him in control. It'll fix the problem that that interview Sam Witwer always talks about, where I've talked about it on the show, where the executives were like, we're going to give him his normal double-bladed lightsaber. And he's like, oh, you mean the one that Obi-Wan cut in half that doesn't exist anymore? That won't happen anymore now that Dave Filoni's there and is up top. So I really like it. Tanner, what do you think?
Oh, I'm all about this, and I just to double check. I mean, as well to just kind of explain for myself and everyone else. Being creative executive producer, we are talking. We're not exactly talking a Kevin Feige level, but we're also not talking about Dave Filoni replacing Kathleen Kennedy. So it's
Yeah.
more of a second in command. Is as I understand that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's like, Kevin Feige is the head of Marvel. That's what
Mhm.
Kathleen is. She's the head of Lucasfilm.
Okay.
But what Filoni was before was he was just coming in to produce and direct. Like he would have a project, he'd finance it, he would, do the work, whatever producer's work is. Now though, Kathleen is basically saying, you're in charge of the creative. So you're on the panel, you're on the board meetings, you're chatting with us, you're chatting with Big Bob, New Bob as I call him. So like that's what he is. So now, I think, and I wonder how long ago this took place. Like, are all these new announcements that we got a while back at the Investors Day, was that before or after this news? Because they said it's been in place for a couple of months, but the Investors Day was a while ago.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he kind of came in and was like, and maybe I think this plays into our other piece of news that the High Republic show is getting canceled. And so I wonder if he kind of came in and was like, look, your problem is you're trying to be Marvel, who shows up and they say the 15 things they're going to do, but you don't deliver on them. Marvel delivers on usually most. Like every now and then they have one that ends up getting on the back burner. But
Right.
so yeah, he is nothing creatively, I don't think now is going to roll. Like we can't blame Kathy anymore. I think now you have to blame Dave and Kathy because she will have final say, so she can say to him, no, bad call. But he can be like, look, I'm telling you, this is George. This is Star Wars. What you had before was not.
Well, and I mean, I would think that considering the positive reception that Dave Filoni has had in being involved with so many different Star Wars projects that have been very successful up to this point, I really hope that she just kind of steps back and doesn't have to pull the trump card of like, nope, I gotta pull you back on this one. I really hope that she lets Dave Filoni just do his thing.
Yeah.
And also on top of that, I do hope that he gets to be have his fingers in a lot of different pies. Not only are we talking,
I think they're in love with him now. I think anything Lucasfilm, I think he's running the kitchen. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but please continue.
That's exactly that's exactly. If we can just get a well, I guess book side would be a little rough just considering how, like, you got to think about how many books
Well,
that are
Kathy
being
does
talked
that.
about.
I think it's
Oh,
everything.
really?
I think he's the creative director. I think everything is now being pumped through his office. I think it goes to him and then goes up for approval. I think he's become the editor to a newspaper. He's not the publisher, he's the editor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
like when you think of, the analogy I use, when a head coach gives up his play calling, he's still bringing in the players. He's still, talking them up. He's still coming up with game plan ideas and still creatively, but on game day, it's now the OC is calling the shots, calling the actual plays and executing. And I think that's what he's doing now.
Got it.
Is execution, and it needs it. Star Wars has lacked a straight vision. They should have done this from the get go. But to also give a little bit of credit to Kathy, I don't think Dave was ready. Dave wasn't ready a couple years ago. He needed a Mandalorian to take up the last 3 years of his life to really push him. He needed, I think, Jon Favreau, who had proven himself, Jon Favreau needed Iron Man just as much
Right.
as I think Dave um, needed Mandalorian. Because I think if you just grab the guy who had done Clone Wars to be the creative head of Lucasfilm, it's not going to work. I
Well,
think he's really honed his craft, the collaborative process. I think he gets the game. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And on top of that, I mean, like, even reviewing when we went through and did Mandalorian, I mean, some of the episodes that are purely directed by Dave Filoni, uh, you can tell that he's still a bit fresh when it comes to something like live action. So, I mean, you are 100% correct that he needed to have something like that under his belt to do it.
Yeah.
Not saying that the episodes were bad by any regards, but what I'm just saying is I feel like his realm really is in animation
Yeah.
and not
Sure.
so much in live action. So
Well,
it's been good to get him in.
I think even more than the directing, it was the producing aspect of The Mandalorian that he had to learn to work. Like you think of the round table of him kind of sitting there and chatting and lecturing everybody, but he really isn't. He's just being him and he's being the geek that he is. But everybody kind of understood after the months of working with him, like, no, we get this guy. Like he's just an uber nerd, but he's now getting the collaborative process. He can bring in directors, they can compromise. That's what I think is really hit because with animation, it was just him and George, or they got to prove it on the scripts and then they just ran with it. But now it's a lot more of getting the game as a whole. So I'm really excited for him. But should we talk about High Republic? So High Republic,
Yes,
supposed to be
we
Gina
should.
Carano show.
Funny
Canceled.
enough, as you were talking about this, I was just kind of skimming the article that you linked via Collider about the interview that Variety have covering Dave Filoni's promotion that he had. They actually specifically talked about in that interview that Rangers of the Republic has been canceled.
Hmm.
As far as we know. Now again, running through this super quick. I guess we don't know everything that's happening here, but it seems like the bulk of it is because of the letting go of Gina
Yeah.
Carano.
I think everything was centered around her. I think the whole point of her getting the medal, I think everything in the show was setting up what she was going to become. I think their whole point was get this strong female lead to lead the first Star Wars show. And I think when all the backlash hit, and rightfully so, she said some not great stuff and like some things that isn't great, to each his own. But Disney had every right to say this does not fit with our brand. You fit with our brand before, and now you're not doing it, and we have every right to let you go. That's what a company does. It's what any job does. And I think they had everything centered around her. They let her go, and it was like, do we really want to workshop this when we've got 80 other things on the docket? I say we just shelve it. And it does say canceled, but I do think that's a shelving. I think it's, hey, let's think of, maybe we'll tweak this later. Maybe we'll do something different later. Maybe we'll figure it out later. But for right now, it's off, and let's focus on Acolyte, Cassian. Let's focus on those shows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm a little bummed out in the fact that like it always just bums me out to be hearing about whatever Star Wars project, whether it be a game or a TV
Yeah.
series or a movie that they're working on, and then all of a sudden the news comes out, it's like, no, it's died. Is always a bummer. Um,
Yeah.
I guess if I had if I had my way with all of this, I would just really hope that they would have just recast Gina Carano. Um,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it makes me wonder what maybe there was something else that's happening with this that we don't realize.
I'm sure. I'm
It,
sure.
but I have no idea. It seems whack that they would cancel something like that again when you could just do that. But I'm sure that there was other production issues, or maybe they're even looking at their schedule with the amount of series that they have, and they're like, "Nah, we can nix
Yeah.
this one. We got to nix it."
Yeah. I did just think though we should go through. I know we're and next week's episode is going to be amazing because we're going to go through all of the tweets that Kasdan put out about what was supposed to happen for Solo. Like that's going to be a fun episode next week. But I was just thinking like when all this ends and we, you know, we're doing different things, we're not doing our rewatch. We should do like go through like a bunch of stuff for the last 10 years of Star Wars that was supposed to come out and didn't happen, and we just have like a quick little like maybe we each take a side, like should we have canceled, should we have not, or we just kind of go over it. I think that'd be kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. Like I think back to Boba Fett, you think to Dan and Dave, who I low-key still think about sometimes, and I go, man, I do think they would have made a good Star Wars. I sit back and I think that they would have done that if they just didn't write the script. Maybe I don't know yet. But anyway, what were you gonna? You got pumped.
Oh, I was kicking myself there for a quick second because I was like, there's a blog post that I read probably about like 2-3 years ago talking as someone kind of went through and talking about the prequel trilogy about how George Lucas almost made
I've seen that
one of the most incredible stories in the prequel trilogy, and I wanted to bring that one to this episode because it's a fascinating read and discussion. I don't think it's good. I mean, it feels a little armchair quarterbacky or armchair admiral kind of a thing where it's like post fact you start examining all of it. But it's a fascinating one where it's like if some of the movies and ideas were just slightly tweaked, how different of an experience we might have had.
Yeah, I've seen that. Maybe that'll be something we should just go through later after the rewatch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
That and the Jar Jar Binks Sith theory. We are going to have a whole episode on that. I'm going to make you do it. All right, but that's a good segue. Let's just get into Revenge of the Sith.